We're now live on YouTube.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am delighted to be here with you on this afternoon and to welcome Ray Salabarez, Senior Vice President, Division of Small Business, Empire State Development Corporation, and Joseph Tazewell, Regional Director of Empire State Development Corporation, who was delighted to partner with our office to do this session. Joe knows how important it is to help our Queens businesses and nonprofits build capacity. Tom Gretsch, President of Queens Chamber of Commerce, who is a reliable partner of this office. He helps us in his role as a member of the Regional Economic Development Corporation and in his role as President of the Queens Chamber of Commerce. Justin Rogers, Interim President and CEO of Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, another of our community partners. We also welcome Judy Zangwill, Executive Director of Sunnyside Community Services. We thank you, Judy and Justin, for providing us with some insight into how they have put together successful grant applications through consolidating funding at the funding application process. I thank the economic development staff, Sharon Anderson and John Perricone, for their help on today's webinar. I also thank Susie Tannenbaum, Director of the Borough President's Nonprofit Network, the communications and the tech teams for their support of these programs. As always, I am pleased to bring you today's information session for one reason, and that is to help ensure Queens has better applications for submission to the state this year for economic development and nonprofit funding. Due to COVID-19, 2020 was a lost year with the CFA process on hold. In 2021, we moved the needle a little bit, but Queens was in 5th place with 4 applications coming in at $2,869,560, just in front of Staten Island, who also had 4 applications at $2 million in funding. Lagging behind is the Bronx at 4 applications at $2,960,000 in funding, followed by Brooklyn, which has 8 applications at $7,511,000, and followed by Manhattan with 18 applications at $18 million. Unfortunately, these are challenging times. Over the past year, many of our small businesses and restaurants closed. Prior to the pandemic, Queens had close to 55,000 registered small businesses, over 100 large businesses with over 250 employees, and approximately 233 nonprofit organizations in the Queens Borough President's Nonprofit Network, representing all sectors of the community, and many of them are online today. Queens also has a diversity of people, 13 business improvement districts, and strong mixed-use neighborhoods like Long Island City, Flushing, and Jamaica, which all demonstrates that Queens has the infrastructure to do better. Queens has to do better by preparing our applicants and giving them the tools they need to be better applicants. And all of us, elected officials and community leaders, must serve as advocates for more applications that are streamlined, cohesive, and applications that are aligned with our priorities, so that Queens can do better. We have projects in Queens that we are proud of, like Gotham Green Urban Hydroponic Farm in Jamaica, and Greater Nexus and Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center in Ozone Park, and we want to see a lot of more projects. Just know that the Borough President is committed to doing everything he can to identify the groups and to help our groups meet funding eligibility. Now I am delighted to welcome Tom Gretsch, President of the Queens Chamber of Commerce, who will provide an overview of the Regional Economic Development Council. Tom.
Good morning, all, and thank you very much. In the words of the esteemed singer-songwriter Michael Bublé, it is a new dawn, it is a new day. I don't just say that tongue-in-cheek, but I mean it. We've got new leadership in Queens, so aptly run by our Borough President, Donovan Richards, with our wonderful Deputy Borough President, Ebony Young. We need to do better. We must do better. If you heard Donovan Richards speak at a State of the Borough a week and a half ago, we're on a roll in Queens County between our 2 airports, our new ownership of the Mets, our cultural establishments, our business efforts, our tech situation in general. We are on a roll beyond compare. And we really need to jump into this. The fact that we're like 4th or 5th in a 5-borough race, to me, is a great, great challenge. I look upon myself as one of the relatively new members of the REDC, having replaced Carol Conslato, a mentor and a friend from Con Ed, as my obligation to the citizens of Queens County. As I said before, we're so ably led by Donovan Richards. There's no way that we should have just 4 or 5 projects. I heard jokingly in years and years ago that one of the biggest and best things we had approved was a parking lot paving project, right? That's not to be accepted anymore. We've got some wonderful attributes in Queens County. I think I've said enough just to get you guys fired up. I really want to hear, and you want to hear, from people like Judy and Justin, who have been the recipients of these projects. If anybody needs any help, my contact information will be available. I'll put it in the chat, but you can always get a hold of me through either our great borough president, Donovan Richards, the wonderful Joe Tazewell from New York State Economic Development, ESD, to get ideas, gumption, assistance, whatever you want to call it, to get Queens projects to the forefront and get those things funded. I yield the floor to our friend Joe Tazewell. Joe, thanks for all you do day in and day out to herd those cats in the New York City Regional Economic Development Council. It's an honor and a privilege to serve. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Tom. First, I'd want to acknowledge the borough president, who I think joined. Sir, did you have?
Do I have anything to say?
Yes.
I'm the borough president. You know, politicians like to talk. We always have something to say. I'm playing. But thank you, Joseph. And I see we're also joined by Deputy Borough President Ebony Young. So I want to thank you. And of course, to John Perricone. I don't know if Sharon is on as well from my staff. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. And I first want to thank Ray Salabarrios, the Senior Vice President of the Division of Small Business, Empire State Development Corporation, and to Joseph, of course. Thank you, the Regional Director of Empire State Development Corporation. Thank you for all that you do. And Joe knows how important it is to help our Queens businesses and nonprofits build capacity. Of course, to my partner, my good friend, Tom Gretsch. He's like an ambassador for Queens County as well. That's right. We don't believe in playing second fiddle to anyone. We want to do much more. Not saying paving parking lots aren't important, but we want to do a lot more than that. And you've been such a reliable partner to this office, and I have to thank you for that, and helping, of course, steer our borough through this time through regional economic development opportunities, and of course, as your role as the president of the Queens Chamber of Commerce. Justin Rogers, interim president. We're going to take that interim off. President and CEO of the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation. Thank you, another of our community partners. And we also welcome Judy Zangwell, who's the Executive Director of Sunnyside Community Services. It's good to see you twice in a few days. We want to thank all of you for the work that you do and helping us to put through this particular grant application through the Consolidated funding application process. And I mentioned my staff as well. And as always, I am pleased to bring you today's information session for one reason, and that is to help ensure Queens has better applications for submission to the state this year for economic development and nonprofit funding. And due to COVID-19, 2020 was a lost year with the CFA process on hold. In 2021, we moved the needle a little bit, but Queens was in fifth place with 4 applications coming in at about $2.8 million, a little bit over that, just in front of Staten Island, who also had 4 applications at a little bit over $2.9 million in funding. Lagging behind is the Bronx, of course, at four, and that was somewhere around 2.9 million, followed by Brooklyn, which had 8 applications for 7.5 million, and Manhattan with 18 applications, which got them about a little bit over 18 million, close to 19 million. We can't do that. We gotta be in the lead here. We gotta be number one. So we're gonna work hard to make sure that happens. And unfortunately, through these challenging times over the past year, many of our small businesses and restaurants closed. Prior to the pandemic, Queens had close to 55,000 registered small businesses, over 100 large businesses with over 250 employees, and approximately 233 nonprofit organizations in the Queensborough President's Nonprofit Network, representing all the sectors of the community, and many of them are on the line today. So I want to thank you for the work you do. Queens also has a diversity of people, 13 business improvement districts, strong mixed-use neighborhoods like Long Island City, Flushing, and Jamaica, which all demonstrates that Queens has the infrastructure to do better. Queens has to do better by preparing our applicants and giving them the tools they need for better applications. And all of us, elected officials and community leaders, must serve as advocates for more applications that are streamlined, cohesive, and applications that are aligned with our priorities so that Queens can do better. We have projects in Queens that we are proud of, like the Gotham Green Urban Hydroponic Farm in Jamaica, and Green Nexus and Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center in Ozone Park. And we do want to see a lot more projects. Just know that I am committed, and I just left the governor this morning. We were at breakfast being hosted by Congressman Meeks. So we are working very closely with our partners from the state, feds, local government to deliver, and know that we are fighting to make sure that we bring the resources here for Queens and that Queens is prioritized, especially being the epicenter of this pandemic. One of the things my office has been diligent in is ensuring that we now take that pain that we endured and utilize the pain that we endured to ensure that Queens is never under-resourced again. And so I'm just happy to be here, grateful to each and every one of you, and look forward to the work ahead to ensure we build back a stronger Queens. So thank you all for your partnership. Look forward to the work ahead. Please get good information today, take notes and follow through. Thank you, Joe.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Borough President Richards and Deputy Borough President Young for that kind introduction. I'm Joe Tazewell and I'm the New York City Regional Director at Empire State Development. I also want to thank Judy and Justin and Tom has been a great regional council member and is a strong advocate for Queens. So, and my appreciation for him for everything he's done with the regional council. So today I'm going to be discussing round 12 of the regional council initiative and $750 million in assistance that is being made available through the Consolidated Funding Application, or CFA for short. John, are you able to put the presentation?
I do have it. Carolina, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. His audio's a little low, but I can start sharing now.
Okay, great.
Great. Next slide, please. So the regional councils, or REDCs for short, were formed in 2011 and support the state's innovative approach to economic development, which empowers regional stakeholders to establish pathways to prosperity mapped out in regional strategic plans. The unprecedented economic devastation caused by COVID-19 highlighted the importance of inclusive growth and resilient strategies. Public, private, and civic collaboration has been the cornerstone of this progress since its inception. The regional council plans will continue to be the basis for economic development investment in each region. Under the governor's leadership, the state is continuously improving the REDC process to maximize impact in each region. This includes measures to promote transparency, streamline the work of the regional councils, and focus on talent as a pillar of equitable economic growth. Next slide, please. The New York State Consolidated Funding Application, or CFA as we call it, was created in 2011 and marked a fundamental shift in the way economic development resources are allocated, ensuring less bureaucracy and greater efficiency to fulfill local needs and help businesses invest in sustainable job growth. The CFA is an efficient and effective tool for applicants to access multiple state funding sources. It functions as the single application that applicants may use to apply for funding from multiple state agency programs using the same system and application. This year, Governor Hochul has made funding available for over 20 programs across 10 state agencies. Next slide, please. This slide gives you an overview of the two timeline tracks, depending on which program an applicant is applying to. Most agency programs will have a due date of 4 p.m. on July 29, 2022. Let me repeat that, 4 p.m. on July 29, 2022. The award announcements for these programs will be made in the fall. No late submissions will be accepted, so be sure to submit early. One exception to the deadline is the ESD grant funds, which has a rolling application process and will remain open until funds are exhausted. Projects will be reviewed on a quarterly basis or more frequently if needed, and awards will be made available to projects as they are approved. There are program-specific webinars for every funding program included in this process. They are available on the REDC website, regionalcouncils.ny.gov. Additionally, a full resource guide with full guidelines for each program is also available on the Regional Council website as well. Next slide, please. Again, funding will be available for over 20 programs across 10 state agencies. This year, $150 million in ESD grant funds statewide will continue to be available on a rolling basis, as I mentioned. 20 million is the maximum amount awarded to projects in any given region. Additionally, applicants for this program will be notified of their awards as they are approved, rather than at the end of the round. As always, not every project is guaranteed funding, but an emphasis will be placed on project readiness and alignment with the strategic plan. Next slide. Here is a list of the 20 CFA programs here. I know these are difficult to read, so I'll go over each one momentarily. New for this year, while most agency programs will continue to be reviewed and scored by the regional councils, some will be scored 100% by state agencies. We're calling these standalone programs. The REDCs will be made aware of the projects applying to these programs, but the regional councils will not score projects that have applied to these particular programs. For programs that continue to be reviewed and scored by the regional councils, they will review the projects for these programs and provide scores that reflect how well a project aligns with a region's goals and strategies. I'll be discussing the regional council scoring process in a bit. Next slide, please. The next 5 slides will continue to be scored by the REDC. Again, a reminder that there is a webinar for each of these programs on the regional council website, regionalcouncils.ny.gov. The first program or set of programs is direct assistance to business and other organizations. First is the ESD grant funds, which offers grants for capital economic development projects intended to create and retain jobs. This is the catch-all program for capital projects for nonprofits, for-profits, nonprofits, and government entities. The second program is the Excelsior Jobs Program, which offers refundable tax credits for-profit firms in certain strategic industries. The next program is Business Incubator, which offers working capital grants for state-designated business incubators. And lastly, there's the Market New York program, which is meant to strengthen tourism and attract visitors to the state by promoting destinations, attractions, and special events. Next program. For community development, there's the Homes and Community Renewal New York Main Street program, which provides resources to invest in projects that provide economic development and housing opportunities in downtown, mixed-use, and commercial districts. The Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation has grant funding that is available for acquisition, planning, development, and improvement of parks, historic properties, and heritage areas. Next slide, please. The Department, I'm sorry. Next slide. The Department of State has local waterfront revitalization funding, which has match grants available on a competitive basis to municipalities to revitalize community and waterfront. They also have a brownfield opportunity area program, which is meant for the revitalization of brownfields, and pre-development
activities to advance project within a designated brownfield opportunity area. I'm going to skip over the canals program because that really applies to upstate localities. Thank you. For energy, lowering energy, there's the NYPA program, Recharge New York, which is designed to create and retain jobs through allocations of lower cost electricity to businesses and nonprofits. NYSERDA also has a carbon neutral economic development program, which provides grants to support planning, design, and installation of economic development projects to operate at carbon neutral or net zero energy performance. There's also the Carbon and Industrial Carbon Challenge, which provides grant funding to fund single projects or project portfolios that reduce carbon emissions for large commercial and industrial customers. Next slide, please. There's also a funding through the Department of Ag and Markets available to administer a grant program that will assist agricultural entities in implementing projects that will invest in critical farm infrastructure. Next slide. And then here is the list of standalone programs. As I mentioned, these programs are being pulled out of scoring by the regional councils and will be scored at 100% by the state agencies. And the applicant, the eligible applicant in most of these programs is government entities. So I'm not going to cover these in much detail, but there are webinars and there is program descriptions of each of these programs on the regional council website. Next slide. So before starting a consolidated funding application, I suggest that you do a little homework and review the regional council's annual reports. Not necessarily all of them, but the last 2 or 3 maybe. And it's really important to understand the council's strategies and priorities, and you will actually be asked about how your project will align with these strategies and priorities in the application. So it's important to do a little legwork first before actually plunging into an application. Next slide, please. So and this is something else that you might want to study. So on the regional council web page, on the New York City Regional Council web page, we have posted the council's priority project criteria, and this is really the criteria for the ESD Capital Grant Program, but it extends to other programs as well. So I won't cover this in much detail, but it is important to really study that document. It will really kind of explain how the council is viewing these areas, and it's through the lens of this criteria that the council's scoring committee will judge programs. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to highlight sort of the state's priorities. That's how this is how we view projects as well. So placemaking is the notion where an investment occurs matter. These are for projects that are where of course are important to our communities and neighborhoods. Workforce development is the belief that people drive the economy. Tradable sectors are areas where involve manufacturing, but in the city a lot of it is software development and technical high-tech companies, and so this is an important area. Innovation, of course, is a strategy of investing in areas of research and commercialization. Next slide. So now we go to the consolidated application and maybe how to approach to these and how to apply. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the CFA scoring. So the regional councils are a critical component of CFA review process for scoring applications. Each REDC will be applying statewide endorsement standards
for evaluating projects that apply to these programs. For each CFA, the Regional Council scoring member or reviewer will determine the degree to which the application implements the Regional Council strategic plan and assign a corresponding number of points. Endorsements will range from 0 to 20 points. 20 points will be awarded if the proposal is identified as a priority project by the Regional Council. 15 points will be awarded if the proposal is very strongly related to the strategic plan, that is identified in the plan and regional benefits. 10 points will be awarded if the proposal advances the strategic plan and has local benefits. 5 points will be awarded if the proposal is consistent with the strategic plan and has project level benefits. And then no points will be awarded if the project is weak and has limited relationship to the council's strategic plan. So these scores count up to 20% of possible points available for each CFA. The other 80% of the points will be assigned by the state agencies based on technical review of criteria. Next slide, please. So this is the interface you will see when you go to the CFA. Again, the CFA is a web-based application that will be accessed by clicking on the tab located at the top of the Regional Council homepage. And then there are a lot of resources that are available on the site, such as the Regional Council Guidebook, the CFA resources available, and CFA program webinars. You can also click on the regions link, which will take you to each of the 10 regions. So you can go to the New York City region and see, our region's annual reports, the project criteria. You can see a listing of the Regional Council members. There's a video that the Regional Council has done on that site. So there's a lot of resources, and I would again urge you to explore these resources before beginning an application. So when you access the CFA system, you go to this website and click on Apply. Next slide, please. So this is the home page for the CFA system. Again, a lot of resources available. Next slide. And again, going back to the standalone programs, again, there's a lot of information available if you're eligible to apply for that. Next slide. So the first thing you need to do is register your project. And a screen will appear containing the organization name, project alias name, and you will receive what we call a token or password. It is important for you to print this page or copy down the token number once you receive that. And then you should check in the your email inbox for a message from CFA at ny.gov. You can, what's great about this system is that, you can begin an application and come back to it, because quite honestly, I don't think you'll be able to finish a CFA, very well with one sitting. So this is something you should begin now if you plan to apply for the July 29 deadline, and make sure it's accurate and that it adequately answers all the questions. So that's what's great about this system. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the system does is that it will lead you, kind of prompt you through the system. So, in one case, you can select the programs if you know which programs apply to your project, but then there's also a function called Program Wizard, which actually leads you through the program. So that's what's nifty about this system. let's see, just a few notes. Mailing hard copies is not an option, right? So everything has to be uploaded into the system, whether they're financial statements, whether they're, if there are any attachments that you need to include, everything has to be done through the CFA system. Again, all required documents must be uploaded before the application can be finalized. And make sure that you are adequately checking all the boxes, and answering all the questions. And then at the end, you click, you acknowledge that the application is complete and ready for finalization. After you finalize and submit your application, it cannot be modified or amended. So that's why, again, you need to make sure that everything is complete, everything is uploaded before submitting send. And again, we will not let you reopen this application or submit any modification of this application after the July 29 deadline. So next slide. So again, if you have any questions, you can email us at nys-nyc@esd.ny.gov. And again, the regional council's website is regionalcouncils.ny.gov. And that's the end of my presentation. So I believe Judy is next.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. You will hear your name mentioned a couple of times in my presentation. So be on the lookout. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My intention is to talk about how transformative this funding has been, to go through some of the specifics of the funding. It's been over a few years, as indicated in the agenda, and to talk about lessons learned, which, if this does feel like an intimidating process, I hope it will ease that feeling a bit. So first of all, I said this funding has been transformative. We have received a total figure of $1,219,000. Of that, $750,000 is capital money, and that left us with 469, rounding up, thousand for direct home health aid training. And it's enabled us to train, certify, and hire primarily immigrant women of color as home health aides. Since we are a provider of home care, we are able to place most of those we train with us. So in 2013, we received a relatively small grant of $34,000. And that actually enabled us to not only do training in in English, but also in Spanish. And I should mention that the current cost for training each trainee is about $2,800. So as with many human service organizations, we did have to put together a funding package in order to support this training. In 2014, we, again, in order to sustain the program, in part, received a grant of $35,000. And in 2017, the funding increased significantly with a grant of $100,000. And that actually enabled us to go into Far Rockaway, which is a geographically isolated community. I think the borough president probably knows something about that. One barrier was transportation, so that was addressed. And it also enabled us to serve the people we were serving, in addition to Far Rockaway. In 2018, we received a $750,000 capital grant. And it initially was to do a build out at our main site, which is at 4331 39th Street in Sunnyside. We were in need of a cosmetic renovation, and we were also bursting at the seams as a result of growth. So we needed to reconfigure the space in order to free up space. And what happened was, we're in a rental building, and the landlord ultimately, after going back and forth, ultimately decided that he could not meet the requirements to make the building capital eligible. In the meantime, we were offered brand new space by a developer in Long Island City at below market rent. So obviously it was too good to turn down. So we made our decision to place our home health aid training in a portion of that space. And I talked to Joe from ESD, And he was amenable to the change. And after going through whatever approval process was required, we were approved to use the dollars towards the build out of that space. So we just moved into that space in May of this year. And it is a very impressive space. It's state-of-the-art training classrooms, and it enables us to do English and Spanish training concurrently. Before, because we didn't have adequate space at our main site, we had to do English training during the day and Spanish training had to be in the evenings and on weekends. So we no longer have to do that. Then in 2018, we also received $100,000 to not only continue our training for residents in the Far Rockaways, but also to continue our training that we had been doing with our English and Spanish students. And in 2021, we were able to receive a $200,000 contract. And that is basically to sustain the robust training program that we have. So now lessons learned. If you don't get funding the first time, don't hesitate to try again. We submitted for $750,000 in 2017, did not get it. We resubmitted in 2018 and did receive it, as you just heard about. Communicate during, before, and after with staff, board members, go to meetings. Our staff went to the info session, spoke with Joe for guidance and clarity on the project. We worked with contract managers to ensure participants were meeting thresholds. We had conversations with staff to guide us with the applications to help us with what priorities were applicable. Much of this Joe went over in his presentation. We also presented at REDC meetings on the project during the submission process. And I will tell you that our experience uniformly has been that the staff is enormously helpful. So I encourage you to reach out. And I just feel I have to mention that with the pandemic, the home health aid workforce, and of course, this is not the only workforce, but it has been significantly affected. There were those who did not want to go into homes, and there were people who did not want the aides in their homes. And we had to we had to cut in half the number of trainees because we had to adhere to the COVID safety standards and ensure that they were 6 feet apart. So I also want to acknowledge there was a shortage of home health aides prior to the pandemic as a result of the low wage issue. Once minimum wage was raised, one could get a job at Target and make the same salary. And you probably all know the state legislature recently increased the wages for home health aides. So we are hopeful that that will be to a large extent addressed. And I just want to say, because Joe mentioned in terms of aligning with the priorities, that REDC has noted that the healthcare industry is one of the few sections of the economy with a surplus of job openings and difficulty filling them. In addition, REDC notes that preventive care opportunities such as home care can be a source of new and improved jobs and economic development opportunities. And, you know, as we are struggling with home care in terms of a workforce shortage and some other issues, we recognize that this is a service that is only and will continue to increase in demand. So thank you very much. Justin, I yield to you.
Thank you, Judy. So, I mean, in the press, first I'd like to thank Joe, John. I know Sharon is actually out sick today for the invite to speak. But, you know, lately our co-working project has been in the press quite a bit, but the co-working project was actually funded through the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. But I just want everybody to know we're about 90 to 95% complete in terms of construction, and we'll be opening in the next 30 days. Now, specifically for the CFA, we received $1.5 million to acquire 3 industrial buildings in downtown Jamaica. And what we intended to do is we intend to split those buildings into smaller maker spaces for light industrial manufacturers. So we were going to break each building into about a 2,000 square foot space for a light manufacturer to occupy. And we thought this would be beneficial because many light manufacturers just don't have the financial capacity to occupy larger buildings or a 10,000 square foot building. So, you know, we said, and I just want to say Mitch Sternbach, who's head of our resource development, he's the one who actually led our CFA process. He's actually on this Zoom. But we did some research, and most light manufacturers are approximately 2,000 to 4,000 square feet. So we decided to split the spaces into 2,000 square feet. What was important in terms of our application? Job creation was definitely very important. I think between the three buildings, our job, we estimated that we'd be creating at least 70 jobs. Another thing that actually happened was we were notified in December 2019 about our grant award. And as everyone knows, in March of 2020, we were hit with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we actually had to delay this project, but I can say that we are going to move forward with this project this year. And we'll be reaching out to Empire State and Joe's team in the next, I would say, 60 days or so to get this ball rolling, because the owners of the building actually held the buildings for us to still acquire them. They didn't sell them. And then one of the owners is so anxious for us to do this project, he is dropping the acquisition cost by about $300,000 to $400,000 for us to move forward. So it's definitely, I would say it's definitely a team effort between us, which is the local not-for-profit, and the property owner. And something else that's very important is, these projects are very complicated. So this is about a $7 million project. And we received $1.5 million from the state, but to finance the entire project, we had to include a capital stack of our own equity, some city money. Then we actually have two bridge lenders, two not-for-profit bridge lenders, which are also going to help in this case. And they are, one of those not-for-profit bridge lenders is going to bridge the 1.5 from the CFA process. So if you have a larger project with a larger cost, you have to figure out how to be creative and come up with a very complicated capital stack. And honestly, we had to do the same thing for our co-working project. Same thing, we had to use some of our own equity. We had to use two bridge lenders. And then because of the pandemic and supply chain issues with our co-working project, the co-working project cost increased by $1 million. So what we had to actually do was we figured out that it would be best for us to use federal new market tax credits on that. So it's not easy, but it's definitely beneficial in terms of process. And listen, our co-working project, we anticipate, we have a waiting list of about 40 individuals and entrepreneurs throughout Southeast Queens. These projects do mean a lot to the community. And, I'm very, very thankful for Empire State for their assistance in doing the process. And that's all I have to say.
Joseph, are you there?
I am. So, John, questions? So Ray Salaberrios, as I may have mentioned, was traveling, and he has a colleague that may join, but let me just make myself available for questions, and I can just speak a little bit about the COVID-19 pandemic small business recovery grant after that.
Okay, are we moving on to questions?
Yes.
Okay, so this is for Tom Gretsch, the first one here. Since the Bangladeshis population has grown in Jamaica at 973%, as of last decade. Most of them are low-skilled, uneducated, and undocumented immigrants, so they need vocational training. Is there any particular grant or assistance for these immigrants, for the immigrants in this community? Thank you.
I think it's a great question. I don't have an answer top of my head based upon that question, but I'd love to talk offline. I'll put my email information in the chat, but just know separately and distinct from REDC is we're going to have one of the largest construction projects.
Looks like he froze. Not sure if we'll get him back. If not, if you could please, Selena, please put your.
And work on.
Oh, there he goes. Okay, you froze for a moment, Tom. Maybe you want to repeat the last piece of your message.
No worries. So I think the internet connection is a little unstable. I would be happy to work on with that Bangladeshi community on finding opportunities, whether it's at the airport or throughout the metropolitan area, specifically in Queens County.
Thank you, Selena, for your question. Are there any more questions that the audience has? Okay. Any additional information that we'd like to share? Okay.
Yes, again, my apologies. Our Senior Vice President, Ray Salabarrios, is not available. He was traveling. We were hoping he would be able to join, but I just wanted to mention that, you know, in addition to these programs through the Consolidated funding application, ESD has a number of business recovery programs related to the pandemic. And so one is a $800 million COVID-19 pandemic small business recovery grant program. And this program was created to assist COVID-19 impacted small businesses throughout the state. The grant awards from this program are allowing businesses across the state to cover costs such as payroll, rent, mortgage payments, personal protection equipment expenses, utility bills, and any costs associated with compliance with COVID-19 health and safety protocols. And just mention at the end of April, nearly $750 million was awarded to over 32,000 small businesses. So, and this program provides flexible grants of $5,000 to $50,000. So, again, I want to urge those organizations that may be eligible for this to please submit an application, and you can visit. You can get more information by visiting www.smallbusinessrecovery.com. And this program is being overseen by a third party called Lindustry, and so they're processing the grants. So I just wanted to again emphasize that. I will send a flyer to John or Shern to send to the attendees here, so that they're have information and can visit the appropriate website.
Joe, or not, I'm sorry, Ebony, if I may just, are not-for-profit, did you mention if not-for-profits are eligible for that funding?
I believe so, Judy.
That they are. Okay, thank you.
I believe so. Oh, actually, yeah, well, it's for-profit entities, because you have to show a loss. But I will get more information. I'm sorry, I don't administer this program, but I will send along a flyer for everyone so they can access this.
Thank you.
We have two more questions that have come in. Thanks to Judy and to Justin for their presentations. Based upon your experiences as a CFA ESD grantee, what types of nonprofit organizations do you feel are best positioned to apply?
Justin, do you want to go first or go ahead?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, Greater Jamaica, we're more involved in small business assistance. And Judy is more, I would say, is it social service, Judy? So, I mean, that gives you kind of an example right there. I mean, it's very broad based. I mean, I do know several not-for-profits who did receive CFA funding, who are into more so programming, in terms of programming for the community. You know, social service is represented by Judy. And as I said, Greater Jamaica, I mean, we're more in terms of small business assistance / somewhat real estate. So, I mean, that kind of gives you a very broad base of, you know, who could apply successfully.
And I'll just add that, you know, ours, obviously, our home health aid training program, obviously, is a workforce development training, and receiving the $750,000 is contingent on providing, I think it's approximately 577 jobs over 5 years. So there is that component connected to it.
Great. Thank you so much, Judy. Yes, Manuel, the PowerPoint slide should be available on our website. And the other question Manuel has is the first deadline is July 29th. Is there an anticipation for the next round of funding opportunities?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, the ESD Capital Grant Program, which is the catch-all for capital programs, is actually a rolling process. So you can apply for that particular program after July 29. But the next period where we'll be reviewing those is at July 29. And then a lot of those other programs, for example, our tourism program, Market New York, the incubator program, you know, many of these, what we call closed-end programs, has the July 29 deadline. And those programs will not be open again until next year, you know, 2023. So I urge everyone, if you have a project, to begin an application now if you can.
Okay, seeing no additional questions, I'd like to close us out. Again, thank you all for joining us today. And if you have any additional questions, please reach out to Joseph Tazewell, and make sure we see some more applications, because Queens needs to lead this, right? Oh. Let's go, Queens, get the money. Any additional questions, comments, or concerns, Joseph?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Borough President. Actually, Ray Salabarius just is on now. Maybe he can.
Ray, would you like to offer some words prior to our leave? I do see him on. You're on mute if you're talking, Ray.
Not sure what's.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there an email address?
His video and his audio is off, so I'm assuming he doesn't want to bring remarks.
Okay, understood. Is there contact information for him, Joseph?
Yes, we'll send that.
Okay, that's amazing. Would like everyone to have a great day.